Give a warm welcome to Chai Vasarhelyi and Jimmy Chin.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. The film is called Nyad, but the linchpin to the narrative is this friendship between Bonnie and Diana. Can you tell us when did you guys realize that that would be the thrust of the narrative, to have this friendship between those two women?
I would say that like most of our films, like be it our nonfiction and our fiction work, may look at a feat, like this incredible journey that Diane and Nyad went on, but the beating heart normally is something personal. And the friendship between Bonnie, Bonnie is the kind of like the soul of this film. And the idea that two women of a certain age can have that type of platonic friendship and the strength that they got from it was something very important to us. And that's why we kind of wanted to make the film.
And Jimmy, I remember when you were here last, you talked about that your films are edit heavy, that you find the narrative during, and you, oh my God, your face, it's the past coming back to you, the fact that you told me this, that your films are very edit heavy, that you find the narrative during editing. Was that the same case with this film?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us here. And it's always wonderful to be in Santa Barbara, so thank you all for coming out. But yes, I mean, I think that's even more so the case in documentaries, where you find the story in the edit. And I have to say, she does a lot of the finding in the edit.
No, like the edit's like my happy place. And I'd say that our editors are our closest creative collaborators. And coming from the nonfiction space, like we approached the edit similarly, where, you know, we had a movie that was on the page, which was excellent. You know, the script was very strong, but there's certain things that we had to find in the edit. And it was interesting to see how those instincts or the craft can translate actually between the genres. So yeah, so we like our edits.
You mentioned, Jimmy, that you break the film several times.
Yeah, that's great. You really remembered our conversation, but from our previous time together. But yes, breaking the film, and honestly, it's usually a call from Chai, and she'll say something like, "I broke the film again," and I'll be like, "Oh gosh," because she's relentless about, and she's not afraid to break the film. And oftentimes I'll feel really good about where the film is going and how it's feeling, and then she'll break the film. And I remember also, like one of my favorite conversations is, obviously we're married, and we have children together, and you know, I'll be on location somewhere and she'll be probably somewhere else or on the edit, and you know, oh, I had to drop off the kids and we have to do this, and we finished the conversation, and this is when we were cutting Free Solo, and right before she hung up, she said, "Oh, and by the way, I turned Free Solo into a love story," and then hung up. And I just remember being like, what? But that's our process together.
What was the big discovery in this film that she called you and she said, by the way?
I mean, I think this idea of really taking and putting the real documentary footage into the film, not just as the kind of intro to Diana in the beginning of the film, and how, you know, I think her and Chris Tellefson, our editor, really, you know, I think really Chai was really pushing to include that footage because it gives you kind of a visceral experience of what it was on top of what we were creating on location, on set. So that was something I thought was really...
You use swimming as a narrative tool, and then we have so many segments of different attempts, and each has a cinematic language. They're very distinct. Can you walk us through your?
Yeah. Well, one of the great things about making this film was the people that touched the film and that we got to work with. Obviously, Annette and Jody. But Claudia Miranda was our DP, who I'm sure some of you have seen his work, Life of Pi, Benjamin Button. I mean, he's Top Gun. Our movie was his next film after Maverick, Top Gun. But we talked a lot about, how do we shoot swimming in a way that it hasn't been seen before, and how are we going to bring people into Diana's experience into her mind through our filming of it. And so a lot of that was about, just because of technology, we were able to shoot with a much smaller camera system where we could be right up, really close to Annette while she was swimming. And, I think that feeling of being right with her was really important. And that sort of visceral experience. And also, we want authenticity. It was something really important to us, and being able to capture it in a way that brought people into the water with
And
her.
you shot, there were parts that you used tank, and other times that you were actually on the ocean filming. Can you tell us about that dynamic, and was it difficult to bring those two worlds together?
I think we pride ourselves on shooting in very challenging environments and up in the mountains and high stakes environments. We had no idea what the challenges were with shooting with water. And, I think we were told the hardest kind of conditions or environments and things to shoot with are children, animals, and water. And we started on in the tank with the water, and I don't think it was as challenging to marry the two. I think the challenge for us was just dealing with scheduling and how challenging it is to work with that variable, because it adds so much time to everything. Even makeup and prosthetics and all that stuff, because it had to be waterproof. Everything had an extra layer to it when you're working in
And
water.
the storm sequence is insane. Was it visually for us? So you used the term visceral. Was it as difficult to shoot as it looks on screen?
No, I think he's directing the question.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was very challenging. I think we were down in the Dominican Republic, so our special effects resources weren't necessarily as good as you can get elsewhere, but we made the most of it. I think we had this one moment where we were we were testing the tank in terms of having the dump tanks splash onto the boat. And we had our stunt double standing in the place where Jody was supposed to stand. And we test the dump tank, and the dump tank hits the boat and launches our stunt double out of the boat. And we're watching it on our screen in the director's tent, and Chai and I are like, oh my God, thank God Jody didn't see that. And then we hear Jody standing right behind us being like, oh, I saw that.
Chai, one of the things that impacted me the most about the narrative is that the songs you guys chose are not there just to entertain us. They drive the narrative. Was that something that was all along in the script? Like using Sound of Silence, Janis Joplin during the storm. Was that built into the script, or it was your?
No, so the song, like the script didn't necessarily specify particular songs, but we did know there was a set list that Diana did listen to constantly while training. So we kind of used that as a guide when we were finding the music. I would just say one thing about Jimmy's anecdote is I then installed a mirror on our monitors so I could see who was behind me.
That's true.
Yeah. So was it difficult to get all the rights for all the songs that you guys wanted?
I mean, it's one example of how the studio really supported us. And we had a wonderful music supervisor who I'm sure many of you know, Sue Jacobs, who worked very hard and tirelessly to get us those songs. And, it's really an art. Who knew that, it's really an art, how you negotiate it, how you work with different artists and don't play favorites amongst titans, like Paul Simon and Neil Young. But she did a great job.
Mm-hmm. And the two roles are so demanding physically and emotionally for any actor. Tell us about choosing, the two of them and the training. I mean, Annette Bening, I've never seen, her body has completely changed for this movie.
Well, it was really important to us to cast age appropriately. And it was a wonderful opportunity to create two very rich roles for female actors of a certain age that you normally don't get to see that often. So it was always had to be Annette. And it just was like an instinct, it was a feeling, it was something, like she's such a great actor. And also it was a role that required a certain commitment. And so it took her a while to commit. But once she did, she spent that year training, swimming daily to prepare herself for the physical demands of the role. And let's just keep in mind, this is our first time ever directing actors. So then we got really spoiled when Jodie Foster agreed to play Bonnie. And likewise, Jodie, it was like an amazing sight when she actually showed up in set, in the DR, and we saw how much work she'd been doing, how much she'd been working out. There's not one image, one shot here of either of them that's been retouched or augmented. It was really important to both of them that they present exactly how they are, because it was part of the role. It was part about being presenting women of a certain age as in their full splendor.
Mm-hmm. So. You're both. Yeah. You're Academy Award-winning directors, but here's your first narrative, and then you have Annette Bening and Jodie Foster. Does that require a different level of skill to direct people into acting?
Well, I worked on only one other fiction film, and that's 20 years ago when I was Mike Nichols' personal assistant. Yes, Closer. So I thought that everyone has a month of rehearsing with the likes of Julia Roberts and, Natalie Portman. I thought that the scriptwriter is always in the room. I thought that you always get your own personal theater for your dailies. This is not the case. But that is what kind of was always stuck in my mind, is we would rehearse, we would do the work on the script. And, again, it was circumstance and luck that we were able to do it. But of course, it was terrifying, especially we started with the water work in the tank, and the producers kept on being no, they can't do that, we've got to protect you from that situation. And, we've shot in the Himalayas with no ropes, in deep caves, and there was something beautiful about the ignorance, because you show up first day, and you are on a megaphone with 400 people listening to you, yelling at Jodie Foster, who's 100 feet away. It was terrifying. But after one good decision, it all just kind of clicked into place, and I think we began to trust our instincts.
Yeah.
And our ability to kind of how very, very much understanding how lucky we are to have such incredible creative collaborators in our actors.
Yeah, literally our first take was in front of 400 people, and our first note ever to Jodie was over a megaphone in front of 400 people. And that was quite actually terrifying. But other than that, I mean, I think for me, it was working with world-class athletes for 20 years of my career, and it felt very familiar when to really kind of create the space to let them do what they do best. And really, in a lot of ways, that's kind of what I felt like our job was to create the space and the environment, and just have your crew and everybody so dialed that when they walked on set, they were ready to go. Mm-hmm. And then you let them do what they do best.
You mentioned about the archival footage, and in that we see that there was all this great amount of people that were part of her team, but you chose to zero in on one boat and a few people. Can you tell us about that choice of just zeroing in on one boat?
I mean, realistically, it was a budget consideration. Our tank was, maybe the size of this room, and we could only fit one boat. And even getting that one boat was very challenging. And also, there was something very special about kind of creating this triangle between John Bartlett, Bonnie, and Diana, and that intimacy of that relationship, and the team on the boat. And, but we wanted to honor the what did happen in real life, and that's why we include those images and that and that title is saying that 40 people accompanied her. But this, for the purposes of making a narrative feature, it felt more appropriate to create a more intimate story.
My favorite composer is Alexander Desplat. You work with him in the film. Tell us about working with him. One thing that I just love, especially his score that he did for this film, is that he avoids sentimentality. Even in the action sequences, he doesn't play action. Tell us about working with Alexander.
We've asked him to score every movie we've ever made. So that's together it's 6, and he's never said yes before. So he said yes.
To be fair, they were documentaries, but yes.
Good documentary.
but we use his music for
prophet,
his temp, like as our temp music for all our films. Like he's always our temp music, and so we always ask him. And then he finally said yes.
He finally said yes, but he had very little time to do it, to actually compose the score. And what's so incredible about working with Alexander is that he composed a score that we could never have even imagined in our head would be perfect for the film. And it was strange, to kind of put your faith in someone, and he doesn't even listen to the temp score when he receives a film. So he just watches it with no music. And he found, it's strange, you work so hard in this movie, and then this genius, gives you the soul that you didn't know you needed. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing better than getting a phone call late at night from Alexander being like, can I play you something on the piano? I mean, I would get weak in the knees, and watching him, he plays the flute on the score, and he's worked with amazing directors, and he treated this film with as much respect and love. And I had the privilege of going to Paris while he was recording, and it was just it's wonderful to see someone who's that creative, just doing what they're great at.
But did you give him the note that in your film, he avoids sentimentality? As I mentioned, the action sequence, he doesn't play it like an action sequence. He goes against the grain. Was that your note?
It was something we discussed. I would say, I think that Alexander knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew that the film couldn't sustain that. It would kind of be against the grain of the film, because the film can't be too earnest. It can't be too dramatic, because there's so much drama already. And the question was how to really supplement the swimming in a way that could help bring to life her inner life. And how do you bring together or associate her childhood memories to her present struggles? It was there's a lot going on, and he had to find a way to kind of let them meet in a synergistic manner.
In all of your films, and now including Nyad, you have this theme of transcending the impossible. Is that something that you were looking for as your narrative leap, or it just happened?
I mean, I think that's an area that we love to explore, this idea of the human potential and the human spirit. And, you know, when humans are kind of pushed up to the very edge of that existence, that's where things become really real, and you have to make real decisions and hard decisions, and you see what people value in those moments, like truly. And I think that that's the space that we love to, you know, examine, because I think it's the essence of being alive. And and so this story for us jumped out at us because, I mean, the way we make decisions of how we make films is, you know, we, believe it or not, have very different points of view and have come up from very different backgrounds. Well, in some ways, but when we find a story where our interests intersect, that's when we get really excited. And I think we also, when we see a story where we know what we want to bring to it, that's when we get excited. And I also think that that's our strength, because we do have such different kind of points of view on things that I lean on her a lot for certain things, and she leans on me for certain things. And, you know, when this story was a story that we felt like we could both bring something different.
But just to add to that, I would say that after making Free Solo, Meru, The Rescue, I think we were we were both interested in seeing how this narrative, or this kind of journey of pursuing an audacious dream, how is it experienced by a woman? And when we read the script for Nyad, we both looked at each other being like, this is exactly what Diana Nyad's story is about. And that was the kind of the exciting part, that it was a way of exploring a question that we're interested in even further. You know, and I think that also has to do with, it's related to the archival use in the film, because, you know, there's something interesting, like what is a true story? Like, how do you convey a true story, even if it's a narrative feature? You know, like it's not unrelated. Yeah, and so I don't know, we were very lucky that we kind of, all of this came together.
All of your films, every time Jimmy Ching Chai Vasarhelyi film, I'm gonna need Xanax during it. I'm like, you know, The Rescue, Free Solo, in this film, I'm like freaking out. I mean, I feel you immerse us. Is that something that you guys do intentionally? I'm gonna put my audience on the edge.
I think it's more like, what does it feel like to be there? How do we open up this experience that may seem so alien and find a connection that an audience can experience? Like, you know, with Free Solo, you know, people used to laugh at Alex. By the end of the film, people are laughing with Alex, and they understand him. And like, we'd be at these Q&As, and he would, like, a kid, like a 10-year-old would ask a question that would be a little, you know, I don't know, juvenile, and he'd be like, "Didn't you watch the movie?" And the crowd would laugh because they understood how he thinks now. You know, and so I think that's always our objective, is like, you know, I can't swim 110 miles at the age of 64, but now I kind of understand what that experience must have been like and what drove her, and even if it's so different from my own, you know, lived experience.
I also think we're also exploring why. Why would someone do that? And
Kind of the question of our marriage. Why would someone ever do that?
It's true. But I think, I don't know how to come back from that. But a big part of what, you know, in my work has always kind of been what I saw as being a bridge, because I am a professional athlete, and I have an understanding of why people do it, and what it feels like, and being able to translate that is something that I think we're both always trying to do, is trying to bring that experience to people in a way so that it expands, hopefully expands people's perception of the human experience. And that, I mean, is film,
Yeah.
I think. So that is something that we try to do if we
And
can.
all through this process, you had Diana and Bonnie Stoll participating in helping you. What was that process like?
Diana and Bonnie are amazing. And we actually have Bonnie here.
Stoll.
Bonnie's still here, and so why don't we talk
Come
about
over.
it together?
Welcome,
yes.
Bonnie Stoll.
All right, we call her Badass Bonnie. Badass Bonnie.
Here, why don't you sit here? Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I aspire to be that person, by the way.
So, Bonnie, how did you've seen the film?
I have.
What do you think?
I think what I like people to walk away from this film, other than the genius of people that were involved in making it, I had nothing to do with that, that I hope people find it inspiring, and I hope people realize how friendships are so important in life.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I read an article that mentioned that you had to read the lines to Jodie Foster.
No, she just wanted the tone of my voice. No, I didn't have to read. I mean, I read some of the lines to her so she could get my voice.
The
tone of
cadence,
my voice,
I mean,
which she did.
which, I mean, this
Listen,
is
I thought
Jodie.
I was watching me the first time I saw this movie. That's the truth. And we look nothing alike. It's the genius of Jodie Foster.
And, you're next to Jodie Foster, and you're reading to her. Tell us what the.
Well, Jodie's just a fine human being, and she's a pleasure to do anything with. She's fabulous, and we spent a lot of time together, and we still spend some time together.
Oh, that's great.
And Annette,
But months.
fabulous.
Months and months.
Yeah,
right?
months and months. Still,
I mean, the production was postponed about 9 months, and it really gave us this opportunity to work on the script extensively with Jodie and Annette and Julia Cox, our screenwriter. But also, it allowed Annette Bening and Jodie Foster to spend a lot of time with Diana and Bonnie in real life, and also watching them together. But that said, I also have to really credit Diana and Bonnie in that they did something that I don't think I could do, which is they let go and gave both actors the space to create their own versions. And likewise, as us with directors, I know.
That's
he's
dog.
stealing the show.
Yeah.
I mean,
the nice thing is that Jodie and Annette knew each other to say hello to, but they have become friends. It's nice. And Annette is still swimming. Found her passion.
Now, but you were never self-conscious about, the fact that you were being observed by.
I don't think that. No. I have ADD, and the first time Jodie and I were sitting, just yakking for 3 hours, and I got up and I said, I have never sat for 3 hours without getting up, walking around. But then she wanted to come back 2 days later. I said, okay, we have to play cards or something. I cannot sit and speak. So that's what we ended up doing for just a long time, getting to know each other that way.
Other than your character and Diana Bartlett, I
Yeah.
just adore the captain. I was curious. He died soon after you guys finished the swim. What was it like for you to see on screen him brought to life?
Well, Reese was fabulous. He was. John Bartlett. Actually, John Bartlett's widow was one of the kayakers, and she came to one of the festivals, and she was mesmerized. Reese was fabulous. Really, he was John Bartlett.
But it must have been very emotional.
It was very emotional for her, but she honored it.
Thank you all for being here. What an amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming. Thank you for having us.
Yes. Spread the word, people.
Well, did they like it?
Yeah,